So there's this growing movement to revive local news. A group called Press Forward is backing the $400 million initiative with 41 local chapters across the country. And here is why. More than 3,200 print newspapers have vanished since 2005, with an estimated 2 newspapers closing every week. Now, that unrelenting decline of local newspapers, still the primary news source in most areas, is leading to a rising number of what are called news deserts in America, estimated at around 213 counties, right, that don't have any kind of local news. So as part of the Press Forward movement, author and journalist Charles Blow is hosting a new documentary series. It's called Reimagining Local News, and it covers everyday people who are building nonprofit newsrooms and the university stepping up to cover underserved areas. Here's a taste of that.
My love of local news began here in Arcadia, Louisiana, 8 miles east of my hometown, where my 4-H club visited the offices of the Bienville Democrat, the small newspaper that served my home parish.
This is where it used to be.
Joining me now to discuss is the host of the Doc, Charles Blow. Welcome to CNN This Morning.
Thanks for having me.
So you've obviously written for national audiences, and I think a lot of journalism students get into the process hoping to be at a big paper. So how has this series, doing it, changed your view of local news?
Well, I think it brought me back to my beginnings. I began in my local area writing for local newspapers, and spent 30 years after that writing for major publications. And what it reminds you of when you're back in the local news trenches is how critical these places are. They're not just doing big J journalism, all the things that would win the prizes, the holding people to account and governments to account, which is incredibly important. They're also doing all the grunt work of the small J journalism, which is the wedding announcements and the obituaries and reporting on the high school games and the features of the lady who wins the local gardening competition. And I think we forget how much connective tissue that sort of information brings into a community. You think you know the guy at the end of the block until he dies, and you read his obituary and you realize that he was in the Vietnam War. Or you think you know the valedictorian until you read her profile and you realize that she's going to study bioengineering. That kind of thing is what reduces the kind of othering of our neighbors. And what we have now is a tremendous amount of that.
So local news going through a financial crisis, but I have to ask, $400 million, it's coming from a lot of different donors, many of which, certainly on the right, they're criticizing them as kind of left-wing donors. How are you reconciling with this conversation about how people, like where the money comes from for the news affects how people see it or whether they should trust it?
Well, what Press Forward is doing is it is not a partisan operation. In fact, what we found in the research is that when you have healthy local news environments, it decreases partisanship, not increases it. And what we found with the legislators around the country who have jumped in to offer government subsidies to support small community newsrooms is that they also recognize that this is a community good, a public good that is not partisan. The thing about local news is that they're actually not writing as much about national politics. That's really not their function. And in the community, it's more likely to be more homogenous anyway. What they're doing is just trying to provide the information about the grocery store that's coming, the dry cleaners that's closing down. That kind of information is less partisan. So this kind of conversation skips over a lot of the partisanship that we see in national news.
Lastly, how are these papers drawing new audiences? We're in this moment where obviously, OpenAI is launching a web browser. So much of the news people get, they're getting online. How do you think this approach can change to basically win back those people who now have kind of lost their taste for their local news?
The one thing that this reporting showed me is that they have not lost a taste for it. People desperately want reliable news sources, and they really, really, really appreciate it. It's just that they weren't making enough money to survive. And when you find a way to put those resources back into those papers and they can survive, people really love what they're getting and what they're seeing from those newspapers. And so that is part of it. Also, expanding the universe of people who are kind of targeted. The current report years ago said that news industry was not doing enough to be diverse enough. The news industry said it would kind of self-police and increase those numbers. It still has not happened. Many of these entrepreneurs in media are doing just that. They're focusing on niches. They're saying this group is underserved. I will serve them if I can get enough money to help me out. And that is what's happening.
Well, Charles Blow, I appreciate hearing about this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.